Did you know that Edgar Allan Poe lived in a log cabin in the middle of the Bronx? Me neither. This got me thinking, what other historical facts was I not made aware of for some reason? So I took a break from the normal hustle and bustle of college life and decided to create my annual YouTube video. You're welcome. In ancient Asia, one of the most popular forms of execution was death by elephant. Now, these weren't no normal elephants, okay? They were elephants trained by humans to twist off limbs and break bones. Naturally. This method of execution was used up until the late 19th century, or around the time when Louisiana made it legal to prize fight, just in case you were wondering. Abraham Lincoln's son, Robert Todd Lincoln, was president for at least 3 different presidential assassinations. The first one, of course, being the infamous Ford Theater assassination, where his dad got shot in the back of the head in front of him. After that, he was an eyewitness to James Garfield's assassination, and finally, he was right outside the building where William McKinley was shot. After that, he decided to stop taking invites. When Alexander the Great was a child, he was reprimanded by a teacher for being wasteful due to him throwing incense into a fire. As an adult, when he was, Alexander the Greating, the, half of the world, he sent that same teacher 18 tons of incense as a thank you for the lesson. The first assassination attempt on a US president was Andrew Jackson, where someone tried to shoot him with a gun. However, when the assassin pulled the trigger, the gunpowder failed to ignite. He then had a backup plan. He pulled out a second gun, and get this, the gunpowder failed to ignite. After that, Andrew Jackson promptly beat him to a bloody pulp with his cane. The first bombs dropped on Berlin by the British did not have any human casualties. However, they did manage to kill an elephant. Okay, unrelated, but how do you miss that badly? Elephants don't just, wander down the streets of Berlin. Okay, they are in a zoo. So they had to have missed so badly they hit the zoo. And normally they're not even in, the first part of the zoo. They're in, the middle of the zoo in a big enclosure. The state of Massachusetts briefly banned Christmas, as people mainly used it as an excuse to get absolutely wasted. However, that wasn't the final straw that made them ban Christmas. That was, of course, young children cross-dressing and knocking on doors begging for food. Throughout history, many people have been executed by many things. One of the most popular methods of execution, of course, was guillotine. Now, people tend to look at guillotines and oh, that happened 200 years ago. No, it's much more recent. In fact, the last execution by guillotine was made in 1977, the same year that Star Wars A New Hope released and the Eagles released Hotel California. Pope Gregory IX made a variety of interesting decisions, but my personal favorite being the fact that he declared war on cats in Europe because they were demonic. This, of course, led to the mass murder of one of God's greatest creations, the cat, in all of Europe. In the year of 1945, not that much happened, just a few little things known as, the atomic bomb and World War II ending. However, a less talked about event of that year was, of course, the invention of the microwave, which in America was used for normal things like reheating food. That's about it, actually. However, when the folks across the pond discovered it, they used it for a much more sinister thing. That, of course, being microwaving to thaw out cryogenically frozen hamsters. Speaking of the Romans, another Roman emperor by the name of Tiberius, who had a normal-sounding name, was not that normal, actually. In fact, he may be the scariest emperor I've heard of in my very limited knowledge of the emperors of Rome. I'm terrified by this man because he was once gifted a prized fish by a fisherman, and instead of saying, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate this," he decided to pin down the fisherman and scrub his face off with the fish he was given to him. For your sake, I did not draw this one. During the Austro-Persian War, Liechtenstein they sent 80 soldiers to the battlefield. However, they remained neutral throughout the conflict, so they ended up returning home with 81 soldiers. They picked up an Italian along the way. Here's a little fact to mess with the perception of time in your head. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank were born on the same year. Even worse, Betty White was born 7 years before either of them. Johnny Cash, one of the most influential people and musicians of all time, is known for many things. However, being a spy is not one of them. Some scholars theorize that Johnny Cash was actually the first person to hear about the death of Stalin. This was because back when Stalin died, Cash was a radio operator in charge of, operating the radio. And, of course, he allegedly heard the message on said radio. When British forces invaded Iceland in World War II, they were met with very little resistance. In fact, the only resistance they were met with was a single man who threw a stick at the troops. He was escorted away by local police almost immediately. During the time of gladiators, not many people knew about medical things. So they decided one of the best treatments they could come up with was using gladiator sweat to treat epilepsy. Epilepsy. And now for the final fact. Lord Byron kept a pet bear in his dorm room. Now this is funny, because most people in college can barely keep their fish alive. Sorry. That's my bad.